What?
I am. I'm gonna sit in the comfortable chair.
Yeah.
I don't know why no one else wants a comfortable chair.
Well, we were saving it for, today our guests are, we're gonna build off of the exhibit that we have here, the Nashville independent labels from the 40s and 50s that I put together, that you guys are welcome to check out on your own. There's also a QR code that has a link to books in the library, in the reading room, and a list of other resources that are available here at CPM to kind of dive deeper into that story. And we're gonna get into today's panel through Excello Records and kind of branch out from there. Jimmy Church, been active since the late 50s, still doing it, still at it, even did Carol Ann's last night, Grown Folks Night at Carol Ann's. I won't spoil too much of the story, so I'll let you get into that later. And then the other guest is Randy Fox, who wrote the book on Excello Records that we have here at the reading room, and then Randy even has a couple to throw at someone later. No. So pay attention. Yeah, I guess to kick it off, since we're talking about the 40s and 50s, before we get into the Excello Records release, I was going to show you, I got the 78, I got the 45. But I didn't know if we wanted to set the stage by looking at, I printed off some of the information here, because I didn't know what, growing up here in Nashville, what you were listening to, who you were following, how you kind of got into the music. Just for background, WSOK is a radio station that starts in Nashville, 1951, majority black owned. There is one white owner, Cal Young, he sells it later.
And also the nephew of Ernie Young, who owns Excello Records.
Okay, there we go. All right. And later, so I printed this off because it's vital to know that you're going to see a name, Ted Jarrett, shows up in a lot of this stuff. Tennessee Republic Records. He is an early DJ on WSOK. Later, when it changes to WVOL, in the late 50s, this is the Tennessee State Library owns this. You're going to see Morgan Babb is a DJ at WVOL, which is an important part of this story, helps us get there, as well as Noble Blackwell, which is a huge part of your story, Jim. But I guess maybe give us the background of growing up in Nashville in the 50s, kind of what motivated you to get involved, and how you find Morgan Babb, or how he finds you.
Well, back then, everybody was at, church, singing in the church. And so we always had little groups and stuff, gospel groups when I was on. And then when I got to high school, I was raised by my grandmother. She was real religious, you couldn't do no secular music, you couldn't, anything you did, you were going to hell, anything out of the church, I was strict. So when we got to my senior year in high school, we decided to get a group together. It was a talent show. And Cameron had, there was a high school then on my senior year. But then Cameron High School and our high school had like a battle of music. And so we had a singing group, and then Cameron had a singing group. So we started Fire Royals is a group that we patterned after. And we liked the way they, Bobby Hill, I'm sure you remember Bobby Hill. Bobby Hill was the one that wrote Sonny, but then he was our guitar player. He played with us. We did the show. And so Morgan Babb saw us, and he said, I'd like to record y'all. And, but he had to get it okay from my grandmother, she didn't want me to, second him. Oh, no, but he was real good at knowing how to get his point over. So she tried to, so she finally let him, okay, go ahead and take it. So that's when we did it, Morgan Babb, he wrote a side, I wrote a side, but he got the credit for both sides. We didn't know anything about it. We were just glad to do a record. We didn't know about what made you record, so we just be rockers. We didn't know about no royalties, We were young, just glad to be on record in high school. You got a record coming out. That was on Excello. And we really, they really boosted us up. So that helped me growing up. And we were called the seniors. And the reason why we were called the seniors is because back then the group called the 4 freshmen. And so well, we're gonna be the 5 seniors. So we changed our name. That's how we got our name. We the seniors. Let me just do 5 seniors instead of they the 4 freshmen. We're gonna be the 5 seniors. So that's how the name got on the album. I mean on the record. And then from there we just hip hop and different labels and stuff. From that, I started going. It took me on my own to do. I did this other stuff. But I started out with the group. And I did. We went to Baton Rouge. Did what's the name of that label in Baton Rouge?
Montel was the next one.
Yeah, man, you want it, man. Yeah. I can never remember that. Yeah, Montel, right. We did that. And so
That
from
was
there,
you and Bobby Hebb?
yeah, Bobby, he was a guitar player.
Yeah.
And but that's why we patterned after Five Royals, because Five Royals had a guitar player, L. Pauly, and he was, real good, and Bobby Hill, nobody thought that he was, really, he was a good writer, but nobody thought that he would ever, go what he, went into all the song, he wrote that Sunday song, that made everything, that's one of the most re-recorded songs that's ever been out. And when we did our first tour, when we did our record, and actually we did the tour, we graduated, we did the tour, set of Wilson shows, and it was segregated back then. And so we played as a train through, and man, you talking about an experience. I've seen some things with people, they would wash up in a Dixie cup of water and just, storm that high. How people really just existed during that time, And me, I had to, we would park outside the city on the train. What I would do, I would walk we segregated now. I would walk early in the morning and make sure, walk to a service station, make sure nobody's there. I timed myself, I could go in there, use the restroom, clean up everything, in 10 minutes, I'm out of there. And this is how, but see what it did, it made you strong, it made you, hey, I'm gonna do this. But the main thing about my thing, I didn't even get paid doing it. Cause I was waiting, with my grandmother, I was waiting to, take some money home. But I worked on the train crew, which would set the tents up, take the tents down. They paid me. So that's how I left, at least I had some money from that, And from one thing led to another, and so I decided to go to LA. And just went, I'm going to LA. Cause, back then, everybody wanted to do something. LA was, LA, let's go to LA, man. We all, bunch of us went to LA, didn't know where we were gonna go. But went to LA and hung around and stayed there with, friends, we didn't know where to stay, we was homeless, stayed around. And so then I got a break where Johnny Otis, you ever heard of Johnny Otis? Mm-hmm. Johnny Otis show. Well, a club called Nightlife had a talent show at the Nightlife. And, different acts and stuff. So I know I heard the Righteous Brothers. They was on the show. And it was a tie when people applaud for the winners, so it was a tie. So I tied with a group, with a band. And what helped me was, back then I favored Jackie Wilson. They called me Little Jackie, So I won the concert, the thing. The deal was, man, See, back then, they would sign you up and don't do anything for you. So when I went to the office to talk to John Otis about, I'm sure you heard of Sugar Pie Saddle, she was there. And they were saying, we like what you're doing, we want to sign you up. And so I went to the restroom. And when I went to the restroom, I heard them say, well, we ain't got a guarantee, man. We can sign them up for 5 years, keep it 5 years. And so, we good. When I heard that, I just walked right out the door. When I eased out and never go back. I'm just thinking that the Righteous Brothers didn't win, so what if they don't want what they would have done to them? They probably would have held them down, because they're not really guaranteeing nothing,
Mm-hmm.
So, one of my highlights is, when I was living in LA, I went to see my family in Detroit. And everybody heard of history of USA. Barry Gordy. So
Motown.
Mm-hmm. So I drove. It was in 61 or something like that. I drove back to Detroit to see my mother, but I went to his building and went in there and said, "Yeah, I want to see Barry Gordy." He said, "Who are you listening to? Jimmy Church." "We don't have none on there." I said, "You ain't sitting out and drove all the way from LA, and you ain't got, oh no, Mr. Church, don't worry, no, we got it." So they called Martha the Vandellas. But Martha, they had just did their records went out then. They had just did, that album. And so I met her, she said, "Jimmy, this is Jimmy Church, and he's here all the way from LA to meet God, and we don't have on the sheet." She said, "Okay," she was his secretary. So she called him, and he said, "Oh, somebody come, bring him on over." So she took me over to his house, and I met him and everything, man. I met Smoke and all of them. It's amazing. Y'all don't understand how these kids, they're just kids. They all would just write songs and stuff. They did all of the artwork of the albums. They did everything. And he only just paid him a little money, That man should be a triple billionaire, the money he made. And so I was watching all this excited and everything, met Smoking, he was, he talked to him, he was doing the writing and stuff. So then I went to his house and we talked and everything. He said, and I let him hear some of my stuff. He said, I like that. I like what you do. He said, Stevie Wonder was just getting ready to be released. That was the next act. He said, I got a lot of male acts. I already got Marvin Gaye, I got Edward Starr, he started naming off the people they got. And we're just getting ready to let Stevie Wonder out, out. And then all you need to do is write your lyrics and stuff. I like where you write. I want to sign you up to write, but you don't get no royalties, you just get a little money for writing. I said, I wasn't even thinking about it anyway. I was just seeing how far I could go. So then after I got to meet him and everything, said everything worked. I went on back to LA, and I went, but me and Martha, we became friends and stuff. I took her and the girls out, and I met them already, they were real nice. She's a real nice person. She came to Nashville years later. Jimmy, remember me, she's real nice. So when you see in LA, it's just, back then it was just, if you weren't pimping, then you can't make it, I grew up in the church. I never drank, never smoked, never did drugs, never did anything. But my grandmother raised me. So I didn't know what, I was part of the scene, but I didn't know what I was doing. She chose me because I favored Jackie Wilson. And you got Johnny Taylor, all the acts, Barbara Womack, all the acts back then, Johnny Guitar Watson. I said I met all of them. Because she chose me, and, I didn't know what I was doing. But life that I really, they'd be high and stuff, man. Come on, church, get a slip, man. I'll be right back, man. I'll be right back. I guess And I said to myself, I can't keep doing this. Something's gonna happen. You know, somebody's gonna do something. I'm gonna say, this man ain't never done nothing. What's going on? So when I came, one of my favorite aunts died. So I came back for the funeral. And while I was there, my grandmother died. My grandmother got sick. So she raised me. So I stayed. And by that time, Nova Blackwell came, you know, my aunt sung with Blackwell's sister. They had a group called the Extra Leaders, and she was singing in that. So my aunt told,
Noble Black.
Nova Blackwell, hey, I made it 5, y'all. 5, 6 in June. Sometimes it slipped me. Okay, so she told him that I got a nephew that sings, you know. So we talked and everything. He said, man, I tell you what, if you stay here, we're come up with a show called Night Train, an all-black show called Night Train. I'm working on it, and I'll put you on every show. I said, what? Pretty sure I'll put you on every show. And I'm gonna manage it, make sure everything happens. And then, you know, I left everything. You know, I never did go back. And then one thing about Little Richard, you know, that's how I met him back then in LA. He always teased me, man, you left that woman, you never did go back, and she waiting on you, you know, you always tease me, you know. So when the show started, that's how I got on when that Night Train started, you know, man, that was it for me. I ain't going nowhere. So I never did go back. I stayed in that, you know, and met everybody, and, you know, from there it just grew and grew and grew. So at that tour you were talking about, when I went on that Jackie Wilson tour, I could see Jackie Wilson is the reason that I realized I didn't have the talent to be a real star. And I would watch him, what he would do, and he would like me because I favored him when he was younger. I favored him. One time we played Charlotte Coliseum, and the kids ran up to the car, numbers in, and I'm sitting in there. You know, so I got out and he got out. They looked. So he said, that's Jackie right there. They ran to me, you know, he started laughing, you know. And then, you know, so that's how it was. He took me over that show. I was on the bus one week. And then he took me off of that show and said, look, little brother, I'm gonna call you my little brother, you're gonna ride with me. And he let me ride in his limousine, you know, we could go. He would teach me things, he would come out and watch me, you know. He would try to, you know, yeah, you got it. No, but I didn't know I didn't have it. And so when I came off that tour, I said, what I'm about to do is get me out. If I'm gonna do music, I gotta do more than just sing. And that's when I realized I'm gonna play an instrument. And so when I started playing an instrument, I was gonna play bass, because we got a lot of guitar players that sing. I'm gonna be a bass player that sing. And have my band. So that's what I always had. So when I came off the tour, I started singing with Billy Cox, you know, Larry Lee, Jimi Hendrix, and Harold Nesbitt. And I was a vocalist for them. And we would play all the little things, man. Hendrix he was really out of it, you know. And I didn't know what drugs were, so I wasn't into drugs and nothing. He stayed high, you know, just mellow and had a good time. But when we played those gigs, he never did play the song like the record. He just played, and Larry Lee is the reason why we got the gigs, because Larry Lee, you know, played the song like it go, and Cox played the bass like it go. So one time we played in Clarksville at the club, and Hendrix busted the speaker. Church, listen to that sound, man. I said, man, this speaker's busted, what you talking about? He was here, Florence tone, it wasn't even out. I mean, he was just, I mean, I never met a guy like him. Nashville wasn't really ready for him. Really, nobody was ready for him. You know, he was hearing things when he played, and Johnny Jones taught him a lot. And he would teach him the blues, how to play the blues and stuff. And he would just away from everybody else. And now you see why, because he had something to give that we didn't understand. He was a great artist, but we didn't understand where he was coming from, because that was something nobody heard about no Forest Tone. Who knew about Forest Tone? When he out. But he was here, you know, I mean, that's how he was. And so I've had a good experience, you know, making records and stuff. But really the only reason why I'm still here, still doing what I'm doing today with the band is because once Hendrix left and he called Cox and Larry Lee with him, you know, to meet him, you know, go over there doing Woodstock. They left me with the band. So all I had to do was get a guitar play. I was playing the bass already. He was teaching me the bass, you know, little by little, you know, because I wanted to have my own band to play bass. So I had the bass down when he left, and all I had to do was hire a guitar player. And the horns and everything stayed, you know, so that's how I kept my band. And without that, I probably would have been through singing, because by me having a band, then I could play behind artists too. I could play, I did my own show. So what got me to still doing this, I saw, we used to play, you know, we all played college, on the college campuses, the frat house and stuff. And I saw a band that came out dressed in the trucks. And this is a frat house. They know kids drunk, they don't care about what you got on. They just want to have a good time and party. These guys came, had tuxedos on, started playing, and called out the girls, you know, the Supremes and all this kind of stuff. I said, what are they doing? And that's the kids over there where we were, because we were just jamming and having a good time. They was over there where we were, over there looking at us. But then I realized, man, that's what I need to do that to keep me going. So what I did, I patterned myself after them. But what I did, I got me girls to come out and do Supremes. Then I got me girls on the second set, they come out and do the Tina Turner thing. So they wear their gowns on the first show, and then they wear their short dresses and high heels on the next show. And that's what's been keeping me working all these years, and I'm still doing it. Just because I saw that group doing something that when you do the Motown music, that doesn't, you know, Motown doesn't ever die. That's the music everybody's gonna always listen to. And once I realized that this is what the people want to hear, and we played a gig in Memphis at a frat house, and we did the Temptation stuff, and he said, man, we like that, we want y'all to do that. Yeah, we like that. So that what kept us, you know, keep doing this, and we played all them frat houses for years and years and years. And then once they got married, they had us to play for the wedding. So it was like, I played like for 3 or 4 generations, you know, because I'm still here. And the great-grandkids, you know, and they get, you know, after dancing and stuff, you know.
Yeah.
So that's what got me still doing it today, because I got a band, you know, I got girls that come out, they do the Supremes and stuff, and then they come back out and do Tina Turner, you know, they dancing and stuff. And that's what, that never dies, because that music never dies, and that's why I knew I would never make it as an artist, you know, on no records or nothing, you know, because I didn't have the voice
You got all these records at least.
I mean, I made them, but they, you know, I made records because of Night Train.
Yeah, okay.
Night Train, you know, I'm an artist. Everybody, you know, saw me on Night Train, and they got favorite Jackie Wilson, and, you know, and they would just, you know, record me. You know, I do records, and I had one hit record, man, on let's see, Soundstage. I think it's
Soundstage 7.
Soundstage 7. I don't care who knows. It was doing good, and it had number one in Mobile, Charlotte, Louisville. You know, this was a hit thing. And I was, you know, so, oh man, maybe this is it. Here comes Joe Simon. And you know, I couldn't trust Joe Simon. That man, that big voice came in and just knocked me out, you know. So that really said, you know, it is, you know, this is really not for me. Let me just get my band. And don't even know I do this records, you know, and people don't care. But one thing about when I did a CD to sell records when I went on overseas on that tour. Can you believe, man? We were in, I think, let's see, we were in one of them countries over there, and these people came out and showed me a 45 that I did when I was on that for Morning Bath. I had a big old 45. Said, Church, would you sign this? I was just totally shocked. All them years later, man, they had, you know.
Was it this one? Slewfoot Sue? And,
Yeah.
And why did you do that?
They had this one, and they had the one I did the Baton Rouge on Montel.
Oh, the high fives?
The high five.
Yeah, with Bobby
Those
Hemming.
are high fives. We had Bob Hill thing. And I said, how in the world them records get well done? I never got a dime. You know, and like only one gave me anything was the record that Roy Cup recorded me.
Hickory
Hickory
Records.
Records. He
Yeah.
did send me a little check every 6 months, whatever it was. Might be $1.25, $3.06. You know, these things were something that he sent, but I never got any kind of royalties from none of the others. You know, and especially this song, I Don't Care Who Knows. You know, I should have got something.
Yeah.
But, you know, and one thing about one thing I think it wasn't really for me to be a record star because I was on OK Records, and I did a song,
The Hurt.
The Hurt, and because I'm gigging, I'm on the road gigging up, and John Oliver was trying to find me. He said, Jimmy, get in touch with me. They want you to come to, I think it was in Chicago, New York. They want you to come there to do a showcase on the song. They want to pick you up and, put you on what was it, the real label, the main label for OK was what? Columbia.
Yeah.
And we're going to put you on Columbia. So, by the time I got the message, I called them. I missed the thing, and they got Bobby Vinton. Y'all heard of Bobby Vinton. They got Bobby Vinton. They was Bobby Vinton. Got that great. So really, I just figured it wasn't for me to make it in the record business. I just don't think it was, because, once you get, it's like now, I don't have no, we got these people that had these records out. When the records get down, I was still doing good, except for if I put a record out, a blues record out or something. Well, I'm getting like 10, 15,000, sometimes 20,000 playing what I play. These guys, we played a show, that was a blues guy. he only got $1,500 to play a show. And we played, the show we played for, where we just, the place we played for those folks, we got 10,000. He only got $150. And he was an act, a long blues act, but it was, he just turned, passed him by. So I'm just glad that I was able to get something that people would never, it won't die out. Motown will never die out. And that's what it's still keeping me today. I don't slow down some, cause I don't want to, wintertime out of, cold, and people got flu and all that stuff. I don't want to catch them. At my age, you never know what might happen. So I just slowed down. I only start out like in the spring and the summer, and I start back out this time in June. I start back out in June.
Cool.
On the road again, doing what I always do. And what's so good about it is that I was smart enough to realize who liked my music. And the only person who really likes my music, what I'm doing, is the white audience. The only ones like what I do. I don't play the black job and what, I don't know. I'll do for my school. I'll play, I go to my school, Pearl High, because they were founded in 18-something. And they have something, I go play for them. But black folks don't want to hear no mom and gay. They want to hear some other stuff. But when I found out, when I realized that the frat houses they like what we do, and then from the frat houses, they get married, they have families, anniversaries, birthdays. That's what's, that's why I'm still doing it. And now, in the summertime, I do have like most outdoor stuff where everybody can come, but 90% of them is white. They'll come because they remember me from the night train. But like we be on shows like with the Commodores and different people like that. And in Owensboro, they have a Jimmy Church Day. You go on my Facebook page and you check out. They have a Jimmy Church Day when they get the mail game, thing. But I've been playing that so many years, so long.
Did you play the executive end once?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
man. Yeah. We played executive end with we played executive end, and then also at the executive end it came to Temptations with Arthur Woodson.
Right.
I knew him. He used some things in my studio. And we played that particular night. We played at the a little club in Owensboro. I can't think the name of it, but we played at this club. Well, Arthur heard I was playing. We were playing at this club, so he and another guy came down to the club where we played at, and so. Can you believe this man? He is all the Woodson put, he had records with Temptation. He's big. He came and saw us playing and he started singing. He said, let me sing a song. I said, like you say, you want to sing? People say, oh yeah, Temptation. He started singing and he enjoyed it, so the girls wanted, it was time for them to come on. They were mad because they couldn't come on. Mm-hmm. He was still singing because he enjoyed it, so just playing for the natural people. That's the club. That's the kind of guy he was. He was just real honest guy, open guy, and he wanted his daughter to play with my group, but I didn't want to be responsible for his daughter because she was living in Miami, in Atlanta, and to join the band, I don't know how. I would have to look out for him, make sure this, I didn't want that responsibility. But we were still cool, and I was when I had my club downtown, that you could call the place. When I had it, I was gonna bring him in, to honor him. But he got sick and he passed away. So I didn't get a chance to
You went to Pearl?
Yeah, I was one of the last ones to go to Pearl. Yeah.
I was wondering, okay.
Yeah.
So that Pearl, I think, went out in what, 60-something, 7, I don't remember. That school started in 18-something.
Yeah.
And I was one of the ones that, because I graduated in 57.
Okay, yeah.
And that's when I went on that tour. And I go back, and still today, we have a few, members still, and I go back and play for the school, because I don't charge them nothing. I just play for the people that comes to the reunion. And, but that's only.
But was the talent show, that first talent show, was it at Pearl? Or was it?
Yeah, Pearl, it was at Pearl, And, so we did our thing, man. We were so happy, man, because, the guys showed us how, hey, look, this is what y'all need to do. Y'all need to do this, do that. And when you come to this, because we were doing like 5 Royals, they said, when you do that, it was dedicated to the one I love. When you say, hey, my weakness, you fall back, and you had this guy, and you catch him when he fall back, and then put him back up. The guy was teaching us. So on that battle, man, and see, the rookies were called the rookies at Cameron. They were the rookies. They had a record out too. And where that battle, and when I, fell back like that, and the guy caught me, I mean, that just, we took the show. We took the show that night. And that was all we were talking. Man, y'all had this guy teaching y'all. Y'all had a professor guy teaching y'all. Them still, they were. But the guy that, he was one of them guys that, just happened to be there. And this happened at the last minute. We didn't know about that kind of thing. Man, y'all do this, and you fall back, man. So come on, you can't, y'all catch when you fall back. That did it, So I've really been blessed, man, to still do it at my age, and still don't have no, I have a knee problem every now and then. That's, that makes you know I'm still here. So that, it's been a blessing to still do what I do at my age, at the level I do it on. I don't have to sit down, most people. I saw my friend the other day, OJ's, he had to sit down and sing, and I hate to see him look like that, But, I hope when I get that way, I hope they just stay, 'cause I want to still do my James Brown, I want to still do my, my dancing, my, Michael Jackson moonwalk. I'm gonna still, I can't do the moonwalk, and, I don't want to just be about, look at me and say, oh, man, do the moonwalk. I don't want nobody to slip and say, oh, help him out, But, I'm just thankful, man. I'm blessed. God has blessed me, and I owe it all to you. Because there's no way I can still be here. But you realize, man, 85, and I've never took a drug, never smoked a cigarette, never took a drink. All the people around me, drugs, and you're in that business. But I never, my grandmother came in my life, because when I was born, my mother and father, they were, back then you had to get, somebody pregnant, you had to marry, so they got married. Then she was 16, then he was 18. And then he, back, but can you imagine him stealing something back in, and they put him in, throw him in the pen. And so I didn't know any of this. So when I was about 3, my mother went to Detroit and started a whole new family because, she was young. Remember that she was about 18 then. And she went on, he stayed in pen for I don't know how many years. So when my grandmother said she was gonna take me with her, my grandmother said, no, when you get settled, I'll send him up to you. She said, okay, so she went up to the Nashville, she was sent from her, she got married, got a whole new family and everything. And so that was just me and my grandmother. And my grandmother was real religious. And so I thank God put her in my life for her to grow. Because all my brothers and stuff, they gone. Drugs and all that stuff. I went up there with her, I thought they gone. So I feel that God stayed me with my grandmother so she could steal me, you know. Well, if anything, you know, if I do anything wrong, the only thing I better honest, only thing I did do wrong, I like girls. One man. You know, that was just something I got from my mother and father, I guess. You know, but for anything else, you know, Bible, I read the Bible, I always have, you know, been into the Bible, into the Word and all. And I just feel that God is the reason why I'm still here, doing what I'm doing, and the level I'm doing it on, you know. Cause I could be sitting, you know, in the chair singing or something, you know, but, you know, I'm good.
Well, I think it's good that Morgan Babb is the one that saw you, because his background is in spiritual music, so he probably was able to speak to your
Right.
grandma.
And
Yeah,
he,
man,
and he
you
later
make-
became a preacher
You
too.
made, you made that, you know, cause I didn't really understand that, but you made a great, yeah, that's probably why. Yeah, cause she said, oh, cause she was definitely against it,
Mhm.
and he probably, you know, talked to her and, you know, yeah, that's a good point, man. That's a good point.
We have some of his we have one of his 45s over there from the Radio 4, and this is another Radio 4 7 here, but, I mean, Randy, did you wanna talk about some of, like,
Talk a little bit about Excello.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
so
how
where
it
it came from.
yeah.
Well, you know, you mentioned WSOK, which was the first all-black radio station in Nashville. But really and truly, if we're gonna talk about R&B, we need to go back a few years before that and talk about WLAC.
Mhm.
And WLAC, Nashville was kind of an interesting market to not be in any bigger city than it was, because Nashville actually had 2 clear channel stations, which was the most powerful radio stations that could be licensed in America. And they were basically 50,000 watts. They were on channels where there were basically no other channels in whatever half of the country on that frequency, because at night, because of the way AM radio travels, so WSM, of course, was the only brand allowed to, and WLAC, at night, their broadcast could reach all the way up into Canada and all the way down into the Caribbean and to Jamaica and even further than that. And so WSM eventually became associated with country music because of Grand Ole Opry. WLAC started off as a pop station, but in 1946, that changed a little bit, because up till that time, and a lot of people don't realize that up till 1946, if you wanted to hear rhythm and blues on the radio, you pretty much had to be in some place like LA or New York or Chicago or Atlanta, because for the most part, and those radio stations that would play rhythm and blues were usually lower power stations.
Were they daytime only?
And sometimes daytime only, yeah. And so if you were out in the country, you just didn't hear R&B records on the radio. You heard pop records, you might hear country records. Occasionally you might hear a black artist if it was somebody like Nat King Cole or Louis Jordan that, you know, were popular enough they kind of crossed over into the pop market. But you did not hear rhythm and blues on the radio. Well, what happened in 1946, there was a DJ, a late night DJ at WLAC named Gene Nobles, who was incredibly popular because he was like one of the original kind of motor mouth DJs, saying outrageous things on the air, doing all this pattern, making jokes and so forth. And the story goes is that in 1946, a group of students at Fisk University came to see Gene Nobles because they loved his show so much, but they said, well, will you play some of our records on the radio? And Gene was like, sure thing, you know, no problem. So he started playing these rhythm and blues records at night. And what WLAC quickly found out is, yeah, they got a few complaints from white people about it, but they got a whole lot more letters asking them to do more, not only from black folks, but also from white folks too. Because it was like, most people was like, what is this music? We've never heard anything like this before on the radio. And so Gene Nobles eventually, his entire nighttime show eventually became pretty much all R&B. And it proved to be so popular for the state. I like to say sometimes, you know, when you talk about black and white in America, the one color that everybody loves is green, you know, because there was money, they realized we can really make money off of this. So they started expanding their nighttime programming. They added other DJs, John Richburg, who was known on the radio as John R., a guy named Herman Broussard, and then a few years later, Hoss Allen would all be DJs on the station. So eventually, WLAC got to the point where basically from around 9 o'clock at night until 7 o'clock in the morning, it was nothing but rhythm and blues. And, except on Sundays, they would play gospel, yeah. And so lots of people were trying to get advertising because this was such popular programming. And there was a record store in Nashville called Buckley's Record Mart, which is actually one of the biggest record stores in Nashville. And he began advertising on the radio. Well, that turned out to be popular. So next, Randy Wood, who owned a shop up in Gallatin called Randy's Record Shop, started advertising too. And at first he was trying to advertise, he got advertised these deals where you could get like so many pop hits, like 5 pop hits for $3 or $2 or something like that. And what would happen is, though, what they quickly found out is that even though because they thought, well, people will want to buy these pop hits because that's the most popular stuff. But what would happen is people would write into Randy's Record Shop and also into Buckley's and say, well, we don't want that package special. We want what Gene Nobles was playing on the radio. And they'd get requests for specific records. So pretty quickly they figured out the money was to be made off the rhythm and blues rather than the pop records like they were trying to sell. So, and then the next one that kind of entered this game was a store called Ernie's Record Mart. Well, the way they do these package deals is that they realized is that, well, this is a great way for us to sell some hits or sell some records that are popular on WLAC, but it's also a way for us to get rid of records that we can't sell any other way. So what they do in these package deals is that you get 5 records for $2, and 3 of them would be, you know,
Filler?
hit records,
Okay.
and then the other 2 would be filler.
Okay.
Well, the next thing that came after that was like, wait a minute, you know, we're selling filler that's on Columbia or OK or Decca or whatever. We can make even more money if we have our own label and we start making the filler R records instead of, you know, these records from other labels. And that's what happened. Buckley's never really got into the record label game. They just sold records. But Randy Wood did it first with Dot Records, and then Ernie Young kind of took a different twist on that because he realized that there was tons of R&B records out there coming from lots of small labels by the early 50s, but he got a lot of people wanting gospel records, and there was not as many gospel records being produced. So his first ideas was like, okay, if I record and release my own gospel records, I got a built-in market automatically for it. And so he started the label Nashville Records in 1951, and it just went gangbusters for him out the gate. A couple years later, he finally decided, well, okay, I'm going to get into the R&B records too, and that's the point when he starts Excello Records. And what he found out was that Excello would occasionally get a hit because what they do on WLAC would play their records if they liked them, the DJs would, but then they also would buy certain amounts of time. So there was actually a show on WLAC called Randy's Record Shop, and there was a show on there called Ernie's Record Parade, I think it was. And all the advertising for that hour would be, you know, just about those stores. And the record, and of course the first 5 records they play would be the 5 records that were in whatever the deal was for that week. So occasionally an Excello release would take off and actually become a hit. But lots of time, but also, as I said as I pointed out in my book, I mean, Ernie Young basically never lost money on a record because he either sold it as a hit, or if it didn't hit, then he'd clear it out as the dog record as part of the other package, as part of the package deals. And and the side effect too was that people all of a sudden, and this is something else to remember about that time, is record stores weren't common in rural areas. So people who lived in the South, both white and black, were used to having to mail order things from Sears and Roebuck or other companies. So when they listen to WLAC at night and again get the address of Randy's or Ernie's or Buckley's, they would, if they heard a record they liked on the radio, even if it was a Motown hit or whatever, they'd write to them and say, can you send me this, you know, and so forth. So Randy started publishing huge catalogs. Ernie was a real cheapskate, so Randy would print these really in-depth catalogs that, you know, like you could kill a fly, you kill bugs with them all day long because they were so heavy. But Ernie's tended to just do little cheap flyers. And they would list like all the R&B hits of the time and so forth. And they'd also say, if there's any record you want, we can get it for you. So pretty quickly, between Ernie's and Randy's especially, they became really the largest record dealers in America. They were shipping thousands and thousands of records every month out to people. And eventually, and then we'll get to this, because you mentioned that, whenever you were over in Europe, people had the record over there. What happened eventually is that, especially in the late, after rock and roll breaks, and it becomes like an all big deal in Britain, the Brits have just they just fell in love with rock and roll and rhythm and blues and soul music, but they were very limited on what they could find, because for one thing, there was nobody was importing records in the UK, because especially in the late 50s, early 60s, the UK still had really strict guidelines about what could be imported into the country, because they were still recovering from World War II. But you could order things directly from America as an individual and have them shipped to you. Well, eventually somebody in the UK found out about Ernie's and Randy's. So all of a sudden you've got all these British kids who have gotten turned on by the handful of Chuck Berry or Howlin' Wolf records that were released in the UK, and they're starting to write to Randy's and Ernie's. And as a matter of fact, I start in the book, the first chapter of my book, the intro, I talk about the fact that there's the famous story about how Keith Richards was taking the train and ran into Mick Jagger, and Mick Jagger had all these American records under his arm. And Keith was like, "Where did you get those?" And he's like, "Well, I'm ordering them from Ernie's Record Mart in Nashville." And they weren't the only ones, because it was just like, they became so competitive about records in the UK. It was like they would, it was almost like a big deal where you could impress your friends by, "Oh, I got this Excello release on Excello." And what happened is that there were certain Excello titles that would eventually make it over to the UK, and they would hear, and then everybody would want them, and they would write to like Ernie's Record Mart and want to order a specific record, and the Seniors one is a good example of that. And in the 1960s, they actually started reissuing some of their older records, because they had so many people in the UK and Europe writing in, asking for copies, and it was long gone. So they just started repressing them.
So that's why this one has the Seniors on one side and white and slim.
Yeah, because what they do is they put, they see what records people were requesting, and they just put two of them together like that to sell mainly to the UK market.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So Morgan Babb, he gets involved.
So anyway, Morgan Babb came to Excello. Actually, the Radio 4 was recording for Nashville. They had recorded for a couple other labels.
I have him on Tennessee and
And Morgan was a really sharp guy, and he was actually kind of working as a talent scout for Nashville. He'd meet gospel acts that he thought were good, that he thought Ernie could sell, and then he'd give them Ernie's number and say, call Ernie Young in Nashville. He'll set you up with a record contract. So at some point, Morgan Babb then actually kind of moved from just being a talent scout to being a producer, and was actually bringing groups into the studio and recording them. And at first it was gospel groups, but then he started also dabbling in R&B stuff, which is how I guess that led to the Seniors. And I've got to doing a public apology here.
Here we go.
I've got a public apology. When I was writing this book, I was researching these records, and one of the ones I really wanted to talk about was the Seniors record, because it's such a great record. And I started trying to find out, okay, who were these guys? Who were the Seniors? I was looking at all these sources. I went through all this trouble of trying to find who were these guys, and I could not find any information on the band at all. So finally in the book I say, Morgan Babb produced it, and it's a great record, blah, 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 but we don't know who it is. And so anyway, the book comes out. I get the first copy, I give it to my good friend Michael Gray, who's an alum here at MTSU, and also is the museum director at the Country Music Hall of Fame, responsible for the Night Train to Nashville. And I give one of the first copies I get to Michael, because Michael helped me out so much. So he's, a day or two later, he calls me and goes, "The Seniors records, you know that's Jimmy Church, don't you?" I go, "No." So Jimmy, I'm sorry that your name did not get in the book, but I will tell anyone that I meet that it should be in there. But I kind of take that as a good tale of no matter how much you think you're an expert about something, there's something you still don't know that you can learn. So anyway, I want to apologize to Jimmy personally for leaving him out. But it's so funny because I'd asked Michael so many questions about so many things, but I never thought to specifically ask that question.
Who else was in the seniors?
It could go on, let's see, William McCoy, Lindsey Page, Joe Cantrell, Eddie Austin, and myself. Well, Eddie Austin, it might have been Eddie, I think that, I know it was Austin, but his daddy was some big wheel and fish. And he didn't want his son to be, on the record. So then we got a guy named, this time next week I know, Stone, his name was Stone. That's his last name, Stone. He took, other guy's place because his people didn't want him singing that kind of music. He was a big wheel. And they didn't want his son to be, singing more like, no blues band or nothing like that. So we got Richard Stone, that's his name, Richard Stone.
You remember where you recorded it?
We called it the studio. Well, what studio?
They had a small studio in Ernie's Record Mart on the third floor of the building. Is that where you recorded it?
You know good well.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I understand.
It was only 1958.
I can't remember stuff my wife told me last week, so I know.
Yeah, I don't remember. I know, we did it in a studio. Richard Stone is the one that took the other guy's place. So he really never did really, he dropped out anyway. The Austin guy, Richard Stone was really one of the original singers. He the one went on the road with us and everything.
So you guys toured the seniors?
Yeah, well, that was our first, that was a carnival I was telling you about.
Oh, yeah.
We once we graduated, for the summer, we went on this Sidney Wilson show tour. And, we were young, excited and everything. That's how, we would play, Bobby did it, we were really good, to be what we were. And when you were mentioning about the British people.
Yeah.
We played for the royal family. And the kids, if you go on my line, you see me and Chris Williams. Anyway, the lady that, I'm sure everybody know Holiday Inn, Wilson owned Holiday Inn, billionaires. Well, we played in Memphis, we played for her sister's wedding. And then the young girl, she said, Jim, I want y'all to play for my wedding when I married. So she was supposed to be about maybe 14, 15, something like that. So then she moved to England, and got in with all the upper selection people. And so when it was time for her to do a wedding, she said she wanted to do her wedding back in Memphis. And all the crew from Memphis came, Prince William, Prince Al, all of them came, to the wedding. And I'm telling you, man, just being strict and everything, they had such a ball. They was dancing on the tables. They just let it go. And so you had to be, you couldn't do that. And they had I couldn't believe it. And I'm not gonna say who, but one of them did a gator.
Oh my God.
And, you know, somebody did the game. I couldn't believe it.
Earlier when I asked you about,
They just, cause they don't get to enjoy it, man. I mean, like you said, everything's straight laced.
earlier when I asked you about the Executive Inn in Owensboro, I'm from Kentucky and I grew up in about 50 miles south of Owensboro. So the Executive Inn was like the big nightclub in that area of
Right.
Kentucky. All the big
Right.
stars would play there.
Everybody played
And,
there.
and matter of fact, my junior prom was there and Jimmy Church didn't play it before. I wish he had.
Let's play that one.
Oh, man, yeah. So that wedding was even wilder than some of the Jackie Wilson touring?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I never seen nothing like that. I mean, the kids, and then we went over the evening. We went to play we went over the evening and played for some kids, for a wedding in England. And it was all, you got it's all, roles there, about, the certain people, from. I mean, it's amazing, man. They don't get to enjoy, just let it go. They got to always be, this certain stoop,
At the very beginning, was More Than Bad y'all's manager?
Yeah.
Okay. And how
How long did that last?
That didn't last long, but he was, we were young, didn't know what we were doing, man. We didn't get no money, nothing, So, we were just happy to get a record. We in high school doing a record. That's the number of girls we looked at us. That's all we cared about. We were young. We didn't understand, the money, the business side of it. We just glad to have a record. Everybody talking about it. You have a record out of you in high school. You got a record on the radio they playing. We didn't know anything. First of all, we didn't know anything about any money. Cause we never told anything about money. You get a royalty, nobody mentioned that. So that's where it was.
how did you and Bobby Hebb end up on that Louisiana label?
See, Bobby wrote a song for me. I don't know what was the name of the label?
Montel?
No, that wasn't. We went to Detroit. We went to New York and did for Hoss Allen. Sent me to New York, and all the jazz guys, Kenny Burrell and Stick Silver, and all the jazz guys did the session. And Bobby wrote a song. With big words and everything. He used the words, non-perishable and all that. So they changed the words around. He was just a great writer. He could write stuff, and I don't know what label it was on, but he did, and then they flew me up there, right? And then I had the money to fly back. I took the bus back. I turned that ticket in and rode the bus back. I mean, that's the way it was back then, man. This is you want to survive. That's what you had to do. But Bobby was really, the thing behind Sonny. I know everybody heard of Sonny. That's one of the biggest songs ever. But he was his brother. We were at this club on Jefferson. His brother was a bouncer, and he got drunk and tried to come in a way, trying to put him out, and the guy they stabbed each other, and the brother died. And so when he went into a depression, and he started thinking, what can I do to bring my brother, to talk about my brother, what he was, and all this. And this thing was died just Sonny. And a lot of people, you could take it either way. It could be a girl, it could be a guy, it could be just sunshine, it could be, the way he wrote it, it could be anything you wanted to be. And it was his brother. And I was right there with it, when it happened, man. You know, he was his daughter, the man that died, his daughter comes to Carolina on Tuesdays and sang sometimes.
Really? And Hoss Allen was your manager at that time?
Yeah, Hoss was the manager. Hoss, oh man. I had somebody to pay for my session, right? When I did I did one session with Bob Johnston. You ever heard of Bob Johnston?
Sure.
I did a session with Bob Johnston. And I had somebody to pay for the session, right? And so Hoss ain't out of nothing. And then, you know, when the record was released, then he got the money. You know, and I paid for the session. So, you know, but you know, you don't say nothing because you just, young, you don't say nothing, you know, but you know, I don't know nobody that I've dealt with that really, you know, other than what's the country guy?
Roy. The Hickory Records?
Yeah, what's his name?
Roy.
He's the only one that only one did, you know, send me something. Like all them records I've been done for business. He's the only one who sent me a little statement. And I kept it for a long time, cause I loved it, 99 cents. You know, I just kept it for a rental, you know. At least he, you know, he's only, you know, how many records have I been on? Out of all the records I've been on, he's the only one that ever sent me anything.
Yeah, let's see. Well, yeah, cause the Hurt, you were talking about that one.
See, well, I had a chance to go with Columbia if I could, because it wasn't for me to go big, man. It wasn't for me to, you know, I look at it like, probably if I was big, I'd probably been gone. You know, I probably got into drugs, I probably got into this, I probably got into that. But by me being just local, I just stayed here. I didn't go up.
You did the Hurt because your cousin, Freddie?
Yeah, he did. I did it because I liked the way he did it.
Yeah, okay.
I liked the way he did it, and I did it. And that song they throw it in England.
Oh, did it? Okay, yeah. How did the Southern artists, that was the one that was, the high tones were the riders on?
High tone, that's Freddie Waters and
Also,
and
Frierson?
Frierson, Eddie
Yeah.
Frierson. Yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering how that came about, cause that's right after,
Well, see,
around the same
you
time as
see-
Night Train, I guess.
See, Manolo was my manager, and Bob Holmes was their manager. So if Bob Holmes did them, even though Bob Holmes helped do my stuff, he did high tones, cause he owned, he managed the high tones. Bob Holmes did. That's how they got on there.
Yeah. Well, I don't wanna drag it out too long. but
Yeah.
I feel like we,
Class time's over.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean,
This
it'll
is-
keep going, cause I'm gonna, then yeah, I mean, we'll cut it off there, I guess.
Yeah, this is great.
This is-
Woo!
Thank you so much.